Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. The Chamber of Mines of South Africa is rethinking its identity and has elected Mxolisi Mgojo its new president. Martin Creamer joins me in studio to discuss this news. Hi, Martin.
Hi, Tracy.
So what has sparked the rebranding and the renaming of the Chamber?
The Chamber is a 128-year-old institution. And although, it's been behind tremendous building of economic activity in South Africa, it also has an abhorrent past. There's no doubt about it that, from 1948, it underpinned apartheid. And that baggage came with migrant labor, which is still a curse, with us today. The impact of that is now being unraveled, but it's still done huge damage to South Africa. It's also, done a lot of positive things, so it's a mix. But the feeling is that it's time now for a total new beginning, to rebrand this, to come up with a new name. Even though, chambers of mines are sort of synonymous with a lot of the institutions related to mining around Africa, even in the world, they feel it's time to move away from this. And I'm just wondering exactly what the whole package will contain. But we have had, the new incoming president talk in quite broad terms ahead of his election here. He's been saying that the mines have a lot of property, and what about using that more productively for agriculture? People go into these mining areas and you see mining activity taking place, work being offered to some in the local community, but many in the local community not active around those mines. And the feeling I have been getting, particularly from Mxolisi Mgojo for some time now, is he'd like something more to be done on that land. There are vast tracts of land. Could the people not be involved in agriculture there? And could it also not involve, perhaps, instead of the Chamber of Mines and emphasizing mining, emphasizing natural resources as a whole? Because you'll see that the incoming president, he heads a company that's also a generator of renewable energy. And in some of the talk around what can be done with mine property on the agricultural front, he's also mentioned, generation of energy from those sort of tracts of land. So I don't think it's going to be done overnight. I think there already has been a lot of thinking, but we are heading for a rebirth of what we know as the Chamber of Mines, and getting rid of a lot of the baggage which still damages its reputation.
How does outgoing President Mike Teke suggest that the South African mining industry go about atoning for its past?
Yes, he was very forthright at the latest Indaba in Cape Town in February. He said in a big mea culpa type speech that the Chamber of Mines must acknowledge, that it underpinned apartheid, which was declared a crime against humanity. It needs to denounce that, and it needs to take steps now which repair the damage. And a lot of his speech yesterday at the 127th AGM, because although it's 128 years old, you're 1 year behind, was devoted to near mine communities, but mainly to people who have worked on the mine, who have contracted typhus, who have got lung problems. And he went into 3 different homes of people who worked on the mine, some of whom had got compensation from the industry in their provident funds, etc. Some who were really suffering from lung disease, just to indicate the legacy that's left behind and the need to do some repair jobs on people who have contributed to this economy, which we all enjoy, but whose health has deteriorated, or who have already died, and have dependents who are now suffering the early loss of people because their lives were cut short through ill health created in mining, particularly at depth.
And what does he hope to achieve through tackling these negative legacy issues?
Well, I think that you've also got to win the hearts and minds of the existing workforce. The existing workforce are still harping back to what this industry did to its people. And you need to show these existing labor force, the labor force, that you are intent on not only denouncing that past, but doing as much as you can to make good and repair that damage while the mines continue to operate. So effort is being made to win the hearts and minds of the people, and that will probably be linking them closer to the big profits when the profits are made, and also getting them to realize that when profits aren't being made, the industry's still got to work together, and restarting this industry against the background of that Zambezi protocol, which has been done for the whole of the African mining industry, because I think they're also going to look more to being part of the whole of the continent when they rebrand, when they rename themselves. And so this exercise, I think, is going to be key for South Africa, because mining still plays a very big role. It's not playing as big a role as it had in the past. 1970 it sort of hit a peak. 1994 I think is even bigger than what we're doing now, related to the big drop in gold production. Mining has not played the big role that it can. But people are intent on getting it back to a growth path and getting the legislative framework fixed so that there can be certainty, so there can be more investment. As was shown yesterday, there is investment, like 90 billion rands worth of investment last year, but it's in stay-in-business capital. In other words, it's ticking over in brownfield sense. There's not the big greenfield project to get growth going. Without growth, Mxolisi Mgojo, the new president, made the point. You can't do the socio-economic things that need to be done in South Africa. If you don't get the sort of certainty right in the mining sector, you won't get the growth that is needed for employment at the moment. Mining drives a lot of the economy, and if the government would stop pussyfooting over this legislation, it would help incredibly. And so those are the points that are coming through at the moment.
And how does Mgojo view South Africa's mining industry?
Well, he, from the way he's running Exxaro. Now, Exxaro is a black-controlled company. It's listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. It employs 6,000 people. Its market cap is, 40 billion rand plus. It's across a broad range of. It's mainly in coal, but it has that experience in mineral sands, and it's still associated with the company Mineral Sands. That might all change. It's also looking to modernize. It really has a modern attitude. You can see that the way he's trying to set up pilot plants to promote digitization in mining and using of modern technology to make sure that there's efficiencies, are indicating his thinking possibly for the chamber as well, that it's got to be a very modern entity. And at the same time, the link that he has to renewable energy also indicate that modern approach that he's got. So he's got coal, he's a huge in coal, and he's supplying that to South Africa's energy needs at the moment, because that's how we get our light at the moment. But he's saying, look, let's start working on the future here, because we've got to look at renewable energy, wind energy, sun energy as well. So he's seeing himself in an energy space rather than just a coal or thermal coal space. Again, indicating his thinking. Now, he's quite a forthright person, 57-year-old. It's his birthday today. May the 25th, he turns 57. But I think he will be a person who does not hesitate to speak truth to power. And so he's an important person to have in there. And you can see that there's an additional vice president as well. And he's also an outspoken lawyer, Steve Perry from Royal Bafokeng Platinum. And then there is retention of the two more vice presidents. So it's an indication that there's a lot of work to be done here. So they've increased that base, that executive base. And I think Mxolisi Mgojo has had a very interesting upbringing. You know, he loves KwaZulu-Natal, his place of birth, and you know, he loves going in there and meeting all the people. But at the same time, he had a very important period where he was highly educated in the US, and this has given him quite a good background for business. And I think his leadership in the chamber here now is going to be quite key for the next couple of years. We've had Mike Techie doing like a 3.5 year stint, so he's done a lot. We know that he's going into Seriti, which is a massive new mining organization, company that has great ambition to acquire some of the operations of Anglo-American. Bids are already in for a lot of the thermal coal there, and he would like to do a lot more. He's almost saying, look, he would like to be as big as Anglo-American was. So that's another important step that's being taken. There are some very big black-controlled entities that are starting to mobilize, and they will also reflect this new membership, this new beginning of what we know as the Chamber of Mines of South Africa, 128-year-old, and you know, getting rid of that baggage. They want a new beginning and a rebirth for the benefit of South Africa, South African people, the economy, and knowing that they do far more than mining. They have a massive impact across the economy, and perhaps they will even look broader at natural resources. Perhaps they will look at oil and gas. Perhaps they will look at least at gas, including in there, because we see that in the past how the gold mines went into the Free State, and they just ignored all that gas, the methane. We saw yesterday the IDC, Industrial Development Corporation, state-owned, is funding entities there that are going to make use of that gas for energy. So the mining companies have tended to be focused on metals. They've gone for that gold in the Free State, totally ignored the gas. Perhaps that could also be a broadening of the chamber as it goes forward, and maybe even bringing in agriculture. We see some of the very big mining companies that are blazing the trail at the moment. They're on not only in metals and minerals, they're not only mining those metals and minerals, they're also in agriculture, as we see with Glencore. And they also heavily in marketing. And we see how important that is now. So it's going to be a broadened base. It'll be interesting to see what the name comes up as, how broad this is going to be. But it'll, again, I think it'll be key for South Africa's economy.
Thanks, Martin.
It's a great pleasure, Tracy.
That's it for today. Join us again next week for more news analysis on the South African mining industry.